here's a little nugget for you that everybody has to kind of think about. Um, Barack Obama wasn't born on the day they say he was born, August 4th. People that saw the alleged mother, Stanley Ann, um, in June of 1960 at University of Washington. These are people that knew her from high school, where she went to high school at Mercer Island, Washington, uh, and her little Unitarian church that she went to over in Bellevue. Locals called it the Red Church because it was so Marxist communist in its mentality, of not very truly Christian as we would know it. Um, saw her at the University of Washington signing up for fall classes in June. She was wearing um, uh, swim clothes with a sheer top over it and was apparently supposedly going to go canoeing down at an area called the Arboretum, which is near the University of Washington. They have they're right next to a big lake, Lake Washington, and they have canoeing, scull teams that rowing teams like that. But there's an area you can go in, you can rent canoes and go in and just paddle around. It's kind of fun, like a little moats in there or something. And so she was apparently going down to do that. We don't know if she was with somebody or whatever was the plan, but that's where she was supposedly headed. And then when they saw her, now you'd have to picture, supposedly August 4th, a month and a half later, she had a baby. So that would have made her somewhere in her eighth month of pregnancy. Imagine, seven, high seven, eighth month, whatever. Imagine that she's wearing a swimsuit with the sheer top. It's the 60s, bikinis are coming in. And then, uh, you know, she has this baby. She shows up for fall classes. And in late September, early October, the same and other women who helped babysit for her. And of course, this is a unique situation because it's a colored baby and he's white. Remember, this is early 60s. Oh my gosh, just a second here. Let me send this call to outer space. Apologize. I had somebody calling in there.
No worries.
But, she's got a colored baby. It's not today. It's, in an era when that was quite a shocker, even in the West Coast. Then, so these people are babysitting, say the baby's wanting to roll over and crawl, things that a baby doesn't do till it's like 6 months old, type of thing. And they're just shocked that she's trying to pass this con off. First of all, that she was pregnant, and second of all, that it's her baby, and nobody knows the father, the boyfriend, whatever you want to call it. So, um, uh, this birth date that's thrown around to us of August 4th is totally fictitious. Um, uh, Reports are out there, and I think they're accurate, that he was born at the Peace Arch Hospital in Vancouver, BC, just over the border from Washington State, where Seattle is, into the Vancouver, BC area, British Columbia, and that the mother was a Indonesian girl, and the father was a white American, and so this was within the intelligence community. And so handing off the baby to Stanley Ann to raise the baby and provide her cover for work that she was doing into, going to do into Indonesia, kind of worked as a cover. But all of that to the side, and by the way, when she worked in Indonesia, you have to think of what a hotspot Indonesia was at the time. Southeast Asia was already in conflict with the French. Uh, they're in Indochina and the region. Indonesia, within just a couple of years, would have a mass purge of a huge percentage of its population, depending on whose account you go by. somewhere between 1 and 5 million people killed in this purge, in this fight between Sukarno and Suharto. And Obama's mama, Stanley Ann, her name, uh, or her work there, she was working for USAID, which has been in the press here recently, in the church committee hearings in the mid 70s, looking at all the atrocities. Excuse me. All the atrocities of the CIA. The head of the CIA in the mid 70s during the church committee hearings said that all USAID employees in South America were actually CIA employees. By extension, that appears to have been the place anywhere in the world. But his specific testimony in the open was concerning the South American ones. And so Barack Hussein Obama's mom almost certainly was working for CIA and the intelligence community in Indonesia, and had cover this colored baby as though it was her own. She later had other children by a soldier in the Indonesian army that married her, but sent Brock back home to be raised by the grandparents. And by the way, both the grandparents, Dad was working undercover for the CIA, for FBI, excuse me, and he was the person that was, amongst other things, staying in close contact with Frank Marshall Davis, an outspoken communist living in Hawaii. And the dad was running supposedly a little furniture shop and repair and sales, all that sort of thing. And his real work was with the FBI. Mom, Stanley Ann Dunham's mom, Barack Hussein Obama's grandmother, Toots, she worked for a bank in Hawaii. And as it turns out, in the 80s, when the Marcoses went into exile, she became the personal banker. She'd already been the personal banker for some time for the Marcoses when they got to take $10 billion out of the Philippines and went into exile and lived in Hawaii. And Barack Obama's grandmother became the banker for them, or was the banker, and continued banking while they lived in Hawaii. Clearly working for the CIA. She'd been working for the CIA all along. Stanley Ann Dunham, while she was from the Seattle area, Mercer Island, which is kind of a community down an island just off, over a bridge from Seattle, and into the Bellevue area where they went to church. Stanley Ann Dunham went into the family business, it appears. When they're in Hawaii and she's arguably late 15, early 16, Frank Marshall Davis, who is this commie that Dad is tracking on the payroll of the FBI, Frank Marshall Davis does the same thing as Hugh Hefner and starts a porn magazine, supposedly with money from friends and relatives and all that sort of thing. Same story as Hefner. Actually got it from the intelligence community because he's trying to create honeypots for our people. And Hawaii is an interesting place because CIA and FBI, they work together. They bring students in from all over the world. You're on an island. Where are you going to go? That somebody doesn't know what's going on. Who are you going to mingle with? It's a very limited community. It was much smaller in those days. So they bring them to the island. They can monitor, make contact, put in contacts to that group, who then go back out into the world, back to their countries of origin, and move into political, financial, opportunistic places. And we can kind of help them along with their friends and buddies, the ones that seem to have it. And it's a nice way to do business.
It's sort of like the Epstein Island business model, right?
It's not a bad way to say it, and not inaccurate. Well, so Stanley Ann Dunham, she actually does a shoot, sex and masochism, porn shoot with Frank Marshall Davis for his magazine. And we actually have the pictures out there. She's with her high boots, up to the thighs, and with her whips and stuff like that, for this little porn magazine that Frank Marshall Davis is publishing. Think about it. She's somewhere late 15, early 16. Her dad is monitoring Frank Marshall Davis, and he brings the daughter into the family business as a young teenager to help, work in the craft. And then she goes on with her schooling and is part of the roping in people as they come into the country at the school. And she's a bit loose. That goes back to her Unitarian church theology teaching, and then goes to Indonesia. By the way, later in life, she dies just before Brock becomes a senator there in Illinois, of ovarian cancer. But interesting little tidbit. She's not available to be interviewed or do anything, but she belonged to an organization called SABUD, supposedly another religious organization that has offices in Indonesia, Hawaii, where she supposedly had the first contact, but possibly Seattle because they have an office in Bellevue where their accounting is all done. They have a location down in Southern California near Topanga Canyon, where all the bands came from that had intelligence agency contacts to the parents, dads, that were famous in the 60s. And then they have a location in Chicago, and they have a location just a few miles down the road from CIA headquarters in Virginia. That's Cebu. That's all their locations in the world. The president of Indonesia, during a big heated political battle, comes out publicly during the presidential campaign and says that Sabud, this religious organization, is a CIA front, this church group that Barack Obama's mother is a member of, where we have pictures of Obama with, down there by the guitar people and all that, that it's a CIA front, and it's trying to overthrow his government there in Indonesia. Oh, well, so another contact into the CIA stuff. Uh, uh, she supposedly dies of ovarian cancer. Go look what happened. Remember when the birth certificate was such a big thing? The governor that's campaigning to become governor in this time period, one of his campaign things, he's going to find the birth certificate that they can't find over there at while Barack is president. He's going to find it and clear this whole mess up. So he comes in, he gets to be president or the governor. He has a news conference, fires the existing head of the Hawaii Department of Public Health, and puts in a woman. The guy that's in there, supposedly he's got problems with Social Security billing. He resigns. Didn't know he was resigning. Even in the news conference, they asked him, "Why are we having this news conference? Why are you resigning?" He says, "I don't know. I don't know why I'm resigning." He didn't have any clue. Was called an hour or two before he got there. And so this woman is put in as the head of Hawaii Department of Public Health. Her name is Loretta Fuddy. Loretta Fuddy had used to live over in Bellevue, Washington, and she was the uh, treasurer of the Sabud religious organization. So she was the treasurer. And did she know Barack Obama's mom? Barack Obama's mom and Loretta Fuddy were part of an organization that only had 3,000 members. They were members of it for, 3 decades. And you'd think that they'd have some communication, knew each other, whatever. It's not that big of an organization. There's only 6 offices on the planet. But amazingly, during all of that time, even though they were in the same city, neighborhood multiple times, when she was going to school over at the University of Washington, Loretta Fuddy is part of this organization. When she's in Indonesia, this treasurer is part of the organization. They never crossed paths. But take a look at a picture of Loretta Fuddy and Stanley Ann. Oh my gosh, it's Supergirl. Superwoman. Oh my gosh. Anyway, So there's all sorts of nefarious goings on over there. Okay, that'll come up down the road. With that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things in the intelligence community when they're passing around some of these kids like this, they'll assign them birth dates. Barack Obama was clearly not born on the day that they said he was born, August 4th, if it was Stanley Ann Dunham's child, because it was only, she'd have been 7.5, 8 months pregnant. If that wasn't the true birth date or wasn't the true mother, the birth date could be all over the place.
Correct.
And so when was the birth date? Well, it was about 6 months earlier. And 4.5, 5 months earlier of his true birth date before people started seeing him 6 months. She could easily just drive up to Canada. We had open border. You just wave to the border guard. Yeah, I'm U.S. citizen. Didn't even have to show your ID.
Mm-hmm.
They just take a picture of your plate and you go right on through in those days. And so going up to Canada, pick up a baby and come back was pretty doggone easy.
Right.
And nobody was checking IDs, anything like that. And if the birth date wasn't his true birth date, why did they pick that date? Because a lot of times to keep things straight down the road, they'd pick a prominent date that fit whichever intelligence agency was involved. And part of the thing with Obama was that the actual operation, people don't think about it right now, the Brits are all over the place in a lot of these operations. And so besides FBI and CIA, MI5 and MI6 are heavily involved. So they kind of keep track of who's got whatever thing. Some dates are chosen for operations, things like that. Barack Obama's birth date, August 4th, is also the birth date of the Queen Mother. Queen Elizabeth, mother, was born August 4th, 1900. And so it's a Brit connection. A lot of the spoofing that was done during the Obama administration to make people think that the Brits and Obama didn't get along was cover. Famously, Obama had a bust of Winston Churchill removed from the White House during his term. Anything that made it look like they got along or had any kind of collusion was removed. And the reality is there was collusive stuff going on all along. And by the way, who is it that wants this war in Ukraine the worst, the most? It's the Brits. They want to keep Russia out of Central Europe. So all of a sudden, here we have a picture of Obama, and he's over 3 times in the last month and a half hanging out with the Brits. Remember, he bought a residence right there in D.C. to be close to Washington, D.C. Most presidents go away and let the new president have room to function unencumbered. But he sticks around there in D.C. Who's remotely operating the remote operators of the autopen?
Yeah.
Who's remotely pulling the strings and levers on Joe Biden? Oh, his arm went up. Well, what Obama did? He put his arm down. He's got to pull on it though. He's
So
getting him to do things that suit.
It seems that
what's going on. So the short version is that you've got a arguably an agent of the British imperialist operation operating in plain sight, coordinating his actions to attack Trump and attack America right there in plain sight. And he's going back and forth, working out what they're going to do fucking next.
Yeah,
there you go.
Exactly exactly what I was going to say. You took the words right out of my mouth. He's obviously reporting to somebody. Great Britain is behind the entire thing, obviously. They got their hands in the cookie jar. It seems like, this is the mastermind, the main mastermind behind the 2020 election debacle, without mentioning that word, because that word is illegal on YouTube still. Even though my movie was a great movie, it still didn't get the notoriety it deserves. The link's down below, guys, dear MrPresident.net. But anyway, needless to say, so it seems that he's going in and out. He's reporting to somebody. Somebody's giving him his marching orders. Am I correct?
Well, he's coordinating his actions. he uh, to say he's just taking orders may be a reach, but there's some kind of coordination going on. And by the way, just so people understand, let's put it in context further. George Soros, who has been funding a lot of this stuff, including the rise to power of Barack Obama and through his presidency, Soros made his money betting against the British pound and other currencies within the British Commonwealth system. So he got a black bag of money that doesn't have to be accounted to anybody.
Hmm.
Who really helped him? He's a British agent. He's an operative of MI6. He got that money taking down these currencies, and that gave him working capital in the 80s and 90s. By the way, during the Reagan administration, of course, we were taking down the Soviet Union. Um, a lot of that money that backfilled the British pound came out of the U.S. system, U.S. Treasury, and there's things going on even right now dealing with that this second. And and it's trillions and trillions and trillions, and that's part of the backstory
Wow.
in the background what's going on. But with that in mind, um, uh, as we were supporting the pound, as we were taking down the ruble, and this fight in the money sector behind the scenes that was, bringing down the or bringing an end to the Cold War. Um, Soros was getting fabulously wealthy, and what's he doing the work with? He's just another puppeted figure. He's just a figurehead. He is the visible side of a British operation, intelligence agency operation to continue to attack the West, to have funding to attack the West into the United States. We're literally in a covert version. Remember the Cold War? It wasn't a hot war. We were fighting things of sneaky little things all over the place, but it didn't wasn't actually nuclear bombs going off. Yet we were in a fight with the Soviet Union. The reality is we're in a type of Cold War right now. And behind the scenes, it's the British banking system, the royalists, the various royal families around the world, predominantly in Europe, and all of their organizations that are right there in plain sight, whose operations appear disconnected, but they're ultimately very connected at high levels. And it's this British imperial system. I think that terminology is the most accurate, trying to bring America back into their rule and orbit. So and remember, just to further kind of help people decide if I'm right or not on this. What was the big thing that was part of the reason why Clinton was so important, so uh, um, uh, capable of becoming the president? He's Billy Carter or Jimmy Carter's campaign manager. Billy was the beer boy. Billy, Billy Beer. People forget that. Some of the people longer in the tooth of the audience will know what I'm talking about. But Jimmy Carter. Uh, uh, I had a point I was going to make there. By the way, Jimmy Carter's mom was a member of CFR, Council of Foreign Relations. His whole entire cabinet were members of Council of Foreign Relations, a Rockefeller operation, coordinating their actions heavily with the globalista, these Eurocentric people that wanted to have a one world government. One of Reagan's campaign uh, uh, things was that we were going to not have the CFR running the country remotely in the cabinet, and that being CFR wasn't the qualification to be on Reagan's cabinet. And uh, so we've been fighting this British um, operation trying to control America, and Bill Clinton. He went to school as a Rhodes Scholar in England. What's a Rhodes Scholar? Well, Cecil Rhodes wanted to train Americans to help them understand the British system, the British monarchy, and then eventually to bring America back under the reign and rule of the British monarchy, the British system, the British Commonwealth, bring us back into of the British Commonwealth where we had, stepped away while declared our independence. Well, is that a good qualification to be president? That you've gone and become a Rhodes Scholar? Look at all the people going after Trump.
Right. Sure.
Stephen Halper, a professor at Cambridge University, where the setup was done to try and say that Flynn bedded a Russian spy. Halper, who was in the Reagan president, worked in the Reagan White House, and then halfway through becomes a banker and is the secret banker behind the scenes in the testimony that wasn't public, involved in Iran-Contra. And then when it looks like there might be get close to him, he disappears into the woodwork, gets a British passport, and becomes a professor over at Cambridge. Still gets paid by the Department of Defense as a contractor, and all the work he does is bullshit. People have looked at it like, this is gibberish. Yeah, he's getting $500,000 a year. It was just he was on the payroll doing stuff for the Brits. What did he do? He set up Flynn. It was his aide, who I think may be one of the FBI officers that Comey. We have an affidavit from one of the women who was in the room when it happened, another FBI officer. She gave the affidavit to Grassley over at the Senate and said that Comey commissioned two women in 2015 to infiltrate the Trump campaign before Operation, hurricane and all this, the Crossfire Hurricane and all that started, before there was any allegations of Trump, collusion with Russia, sends them into the Trump campaign without any proper basis legally for doing this, and commissions them to honeypot, do whatever they have to get information out of the Trump campaign against Trump. And that's part of the allegations against Comey, but not the stuff he's been charged with yet.
Yeah.
And so Stephen Halper has a gal who's one of his student aides that's a looker, and she tries to bed Papadopoulos. Well, Papadopoulos is a young married guy, and he's got values, he's got morals, he's got one of the most beautiful wives on the planet. And yet they're trying to infiltrate. They figure he's just, like them, and he isn't. And so she doesn't succeed. But that was over in Stephen Halper, who also said that Flynn tried to, or did bed the Russian agent, and so he can't be trusted, and blah, 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 at a conference he set up. The Brits are all over this shit.
Yeah.
Okay? And the collusion between CIA and MI6, FBI and MI5. MI5 is like our FBI. MI6 is like our CIA. One's internal, one's external investigations, for people that don't know. I had a very famous friend who would always call it M16. And one day I said, what is he talking about? I can't understand what he's talking about. I realized, he's reading MI6 and reading it as M16.
Wow.
British M16. I'm like, what in the world? Anyway, so sometimes when it's in print, it throws you off. And it was somebody who would go, how could they be that far off? But they got to know this, but they didn't. So anyway, there's some other connection, the Soros stuff out of MI6, MI5, the Brits, the whole operation connecting with Obama, who pulled the bust out of Churchill, who supposedly is at great odds with him and doesn't like him. It's all theater. It's all a play. And now we see that it is, because he's over there coordinating his actions with them. And what is the backdrop to all of this? Even Brennan the other day, Brennan is the one that created the false history for Obama in more recent times, not all the way back at the beginning, but back at the birth and all that. But in more recent times, Barack Obama supposedly went to Columbia University and got his political science degree there. Well, Michael Medved went to Columbia University. It's a 4-year degree. Michael Medved's a well-known talk show host here in the U.S. Long history. He went the exact same 4 years. There was about 23, 25 students in that class, and they all had to work together because they've got to, do their reports and everything to get their 4-year degrees. So they study together, they share stuff, they all know each other. 4 years at the same university, it's not that big of a place. In that 4 years, never ever once met or saw Obama. Nobody else did. You pull all the, I never saw him. You meet him? You ever work with him? You ever saw him there? No. And then he supposedly gets this thing over to Harvard and becomes the head of the Harvard Law Review. And the money to go to Harvard comes from a Saudi financier, Al Masood. And uh, it's all bullshit. Well, who puts those secret histories together for people that have to have it for a cover as an asset to CIA? At that time, Brennan was doing that.
Right.
And clearing out, creating false passport information or deleting stuff, etc. That's all Brennan.
Right.
The other day, Brennan had an interview that he did and totally lost it over the 51 people from the intelligence community that said that Hunter Biden laptop was a obvious Russian disinformation plot. Totally had been disproven before he even did that to throw the 2020 election.
Right.
And so there's all this collusion in these areas with the Brits. There's stuff with Brennan, the Brits, and all that. Long and short of it is, they know that something's about to break, and they're getting very, very dicey, sensitive to everything, including the idea that there's going to be arrests. And so they're getting wilder and wilder. Even Obama, is he going to run to Kenya, which was a British protectorate at the time he was born, wasn't even a country yet? Are the Brits going to protect him?
Yeah. Will we see
Go
an
into
arrest here
exile in
soon?
Britain.
Will we see
Huh?
an arrest here soon, Juan?
Well, I think it's becoming more and more obvious by the hour that we're very close to some types of arrests. You've already seen some of the lightweight ones kind of greasing the skids. Bolton, Comey, um, uh, Letitia, the prosecutor up there. There's going to be plenty more, but we're going to move into the more serious Russia stuff. That's the first stuff that'll go. And all these players are tied into the false narrative of, Trump colluding with Russia and trying to overturn the results of the 2016 election and Trump's first term. They interfered in his ability to be president and operate as president. And that's the first arrest. Following would be the stuff related to the 2020 election, the second time around. So that's coming. It's getting very, very
Is it even them, or is this kabuki theater? Is this just to appease the normies out there so that we don't fall into some chaos? Who the hell is running the country right now? Because it's clearly not the elected officials that we see on camera. So what the hell's going on?
Well, wait. Are you contending that Trump isn't running the country and people around him?
No, they are, but the people that are supposedly, in the background, the Democrats who are yelling and screaming. I think this has a lot to do with them shutting down a lot of the programs that have been stealing from the American people. And now that the government's shut down and they're not budging, they're like, hey, we're not even in any hurry to open up the government back, because right now they're basically got carte blanche and able to shut down a lot of these illegal.
Well, let's help people. Let's not say it too wildly. The reality of the matter is that the Democrats, Obama's main thing, his legacy to the world, to America, was the Obama health care plan, which was a wipeout for the way we do business. I remember, we had some great healthcare plans. I had one that was Blue Cross for all my employees that was fantastic. Really, it wasn't cheap, but it was a very good plan. And lots of other people had similar. When Obama went to the Obamacare, they destroyed what was left of the healthcare private system,
Mhm.
and it didn't provide what they claimed it would provide. All of the warnings about how it would destroy the healthcare industry and the hospital industry and like that really have turned out to be pretty much exactly what they said. So Trump, as part of what we're doing to try and get the economy under control, is to move away from this socialist Marxist healthcare system, what it's become, and begin laying the groundwork to go back to some kind of better healthcare system. And as part of that, this budget was going to increase the money going to a lot of these failed systems, as well as other mischief that, in a Doge world where we've seen USAID and all sorts of other programs exposed for the waste and abuse and like that, and what's really going on versus what you're told is going on. Stopping cutting that out of the budget. The Democrats said, no, you got to fund all this stuff. You got to do it or we won't sign. So uh, Trump gave a path forward that was pretty good, just didn't allow for the healthcare stuff to continue on the way it was. And the Democrats said no. And so here we are. So um, that's what's being fought over and argued. And Trump says we just can't afford it. We're not going to go forward that way. It's Obamacare versus, something that we can afford because it's going to break the American budget. It is breaking the American budget right now. And uh, that's the standoff. And the Democrats won't back off, including all the wonky funding for DEI for butterflies in Africa or whatever, bullshit things. So, uh, and Trump warned. He's said all the way along his goal was to reduce the federal workforce by 50%. So as you've seen him come into office, a lot of the stuff that he's done has been to pare back and return to states, not the federal government, various authorities and responsibilities. When
Right.
you run money through the federal government, they got to take their 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever, and then they return it to the states. Why not just leave it in the states and let them tax or whatever they're going to do in the first place
Correct.
instead of running it through an extra filter?
Hmm.
And as Bro said, that great sucking sound.
Yeah. Is the government right now shut down? Is this a real shutdown, or is this staged to basically do a controlled demolition and a restructure of power?
Well, it's a real shutdown, but in the process, it is providing a context where Trump can furlough workers and also, essentially fire workers and begin paring a lot of these operations down. And day one, Trump was
Hmm.
doing that. In fact, in the first hour that Trump was president this time around, right off the bat, he fired just shy of 9,000 senior executive service employees, an agency he didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
If they can fire 9,000, how many more are left to keep the company going or the
Right.
group going? That's the real fight over there um,
Yeah.
in continuity government, and but lots and lots and lots of other agencies also paring them back, firing people, even you know getting rid of people that they just don't want.
Yeah.
And
What percentage of this you think has to do with bringing in the new banking system?
well, uh, the banking stuff is really for the most part, a separate lane. Uh, One thing that's not known publicly, widely, certainly was never reported anywhere. On the day that we had the Army do their 250th anniversary there in Washington D.C. and the parade and all the historic outfits and stuff like that. In that same time frame, you had military personnel in civilian clothes predominantly going into Treasury, and all of the workers in Treasury in the building were invited to leave. And they went through the building, did all sorts of stuff, and then allowed some of the employees to start trickling back in. What exactly, precisely happened to Treasury is not known or public at this point in time, but they certainly did some kind of a house cleaning and rearrangement. Um, and by the way, the most important cabinet position in the cabinet really is the Treasury. Uh, uh, as far as power,
Hmm.
next to the president themselves, it's arguably on the civilian side the most powerful office of government. The Department of War being, uh, in another similar kind of a very, very powerful position. But the money supply, the banking is crucial. And by the way, when Trump, and I've said this to your audience and other audiences, but I want people to keep this in mind. When Trump finished with the Army's 250th anniversary, the big display, and the not publicized cleaning out of Treasury and getting a handle on what's going on over there, he then had these two flags put up on the White House front lawn, like Mount Suribachi, raising the flag, the military putting it up there, conquering the high ground in the swamp. And but then he had security fencing put around the White House. Didn't have it put anywhere else in Washington D.C. Didn't put it around the Congress. Didn't put it around the Supreme Court, except around Treasury. Didn't do it around the Federal Reserve. Remember, Federal Reserve and Treasury operations are commingled, but the Federal Reserve is not a uh, branch of the U.S. government. It's a private banking organization tied to the international reserve system run out of the City of London and the banks out of London and the resolving of all the accounts in Basel, Switzerland. So that's really a foreign operation on U.S. soil. Trump put security fencing around the Treasury because the war, in many ways, that he's fighting isn't even the overt war with the Department of War, changing the name of Department of Defense, Department of War. It's with the banking and treasury system, the monetary system around the world. So he put security fencing around the U.S. Treasury and the White House and no place else. And then he goes to war with Powell over at the Federal Reserve. He even kicks the board of governors for the Federal Reserve, the bank presidents from across the country that set interest rates and things like that, money supply, how much we're going to print this week. He kicked him out of the offices in D.C. that were U.S. government office building and closes up the building. Close, go find your own office somewhere, just to make the point that they're not an official agency of government yet. They've got a building that's their building there in Washington, D.C. Well, Trump shut them down. He's making a point that he's moving our financial uh, operations as a people, as a government, back to Treasury and away from this internationalist banker centric system. We're not their tool, we're our own.
Yeah, you do understand that Ripple and XRP is front and center. Okay, you have to be absolutely crazy not to understand that the stage is set for XRP and Ripple. Ripple is now partners with the new structure of the new Treasury and the new Federal Reserve, whatever is going to come of it. I think the entire
Well,
system.
don't commingle. This is an extremely important distinction. If you say Treasury and Federal Reserve in the same breath, that goes back to the Federal Open Market Committee uh, and all of their operations. We are not going to be living in an illusion as to who's in power as time goes on. Trump is clearly drawing a line in the sand
Yes.
over Treasury um, uh, certificates or notes, which will be the money moving forward at some point, and the Federal Reserve notes, which are just fiat money. They're backed by
Really.
nothing.
Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
watching the entire institution, the crumble, Congress, the media agencies, all of it. I think it's all collapsing under its own weight. What do you think?
Well, I think I don't want to be too simplistic. Trump, this shutdown, the Democrats forced it. Trump gave a way out, just wasn't going to continue to go down the drain in the Obamacare healthcare system and continue to fund it. And he wasn't going to continue to fund things that Doge and other operations had revealed were BS. He wasn't going to continue to do that. start cleaning up our affairs within our spending. And so it wasn't going to be business as usual. The Democrats want business as usual, as it's been going all along. And he says, no, not
Yeah.
going to happen. So, and Trump, by the way, for just to kind of get into how he presents himself, even to his own people, he'll listen to stuff. He'll, let people explain things. He'll look at the paperwork and all that, but he'll reach a point where he has had it. He doesn't, it's now time for action. And so he will essentially, um, tell people around him, literally, fuck it. I don't even want to listen to that shit anymore. Let's go fix it. Now we're going to fix it. I'm done listening to that crap. It's over. Now we're doing this.
Hmm.
So he'll entertain stuff up to a point, let people, say whatever they want to say, try to convince whatever. And then when the time comes, the cup is full, he's all done with the patty cakes. And he is like flipping a switch, and now we're doing this. And I don't care what anybody says, we're going to do this because it's the right thing to do. We're not going to, no more bullshit. Okay.
Right.
Kill the bull, and he will be that decisive. And when he flips in that mode, people around him know, just get out of the way. He tells you want something done, that's what you're doing. And you want to have the conversation still. He's done with the conversation bullshit. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Get in line. We're moving forward. Done with the bullshit.
Steve Bannon is definitely hinting that there is a clear pathway for Donald Trump to take a third term. Where are you on that?
Well, I think Professor Clement did a pretty good video. He's a lawyer, teaches constitutional law, and has looked at that. He just put out a video the other day on that, and kind of dissects the legalities involved in what it would take to allow him to become president again. And I think without wasting too much time going on into the minutia, that half hour to hear what he has to say pretty decisively lays out how could he do it legally and why would or wouldn't he do it. I think it's a bit of trolling personally. The reality is that um, barring some kind of um, problem within the way things are developing and stabilizing for the country, that Trump doesn't see the wisdom of him seeking another term, that America will be ready and need new leadership at that point in time. And so he may troll the other guys, everybody, for a period of time, but I don't actually think he'll do that at the end of the day. But, anything could happen.